Poppy Playtime Chapter 6 is coming! And after everything Marvel Entertainment left us with in Chapter 5, like the prototype experimenting on Poppy, Huggy, Wuggy and Kissy Missy dead, Chum Chompkins disappearing, and a hidden negation formula that can finally kill Experiment 1006, we can already predict most of what's about to happen next. I went through every tape, every note, every Preston Willard flashback, and once you connect everything together, the picture gets really clear. This is what's gonna happen in Poppy Playtime Chapter 6. Now, before we get into this, there are 3 things you need to keep in mind. First, not every loose end from Chapter 5 is getting resolved in Chapter 6. Some of these storylines are absolutely getting pushed into Chapter 7. Oh yes guys, there's gonna be more. Second, there's one specific scene in Chapter 5 that Mob basically showed us twice, and that scene might be the biggest clue in the entire chapter. And third, there's a character you barely saw for 30 seconds in Chapter 5 who's about to become one of the biggest threats in Chapter 6. But before we get into that, let's start with the Wrongside Outimals. In Chapter 5, we learned that the prototype continued the Wrongside Outimals experiments himself. He literally modified the VHS training tapes they used inside the labs. And what's creepy is that an early note in the game confirms this toy line was never released. These toys never made it out of Playtime Co, and Mama barely used them in Chapter 5. That's why Chapter 6 is 100% taking us deeper into those labs. If you actually stop and listen carefully, you can hear them talking about someone called the Judge.
There is no above. The judge said, "Can't trust the judge. Can't trust any of them, not like us."
Telling the toys that there's nothing outside the factory. And the second the toys realize we come from the outside, they panic! Because to them, we literally shouldn't exist. So, who exactly is the Judge? There are really only 2 possibilities here. Either the Judge is the prototype manipulating the toys and keeping them trapped inside the factory, or the Judge is another experiment entirely. Some kind of containment creature created specifically to stop the toys from escaping. Basically, the prototype's enforcer. And it gets even creepier than that, because the Wrongside Outimals also had their own internal news broadcasts. They were being fed controlled information about what was happening inside Playtime Co. And well, these toys were basically living inside their own fake reality. And Chapter 6 is finally gonna tear that open. And if that sounds interesting, remember that Chapter 5 also gave us 3 separate Huggy Wuggy flashbacks. The first one shows Huggy right after his transformation, touching his own face in complete shock. The second shows Playtime Co trying to train him to control his rage and obey commands. And the third shows the exact moment he completely snaps and kills a Playtime Co specialist. And now think about this for a second. Why would Mob Entertainment spend that much time showing us Huggy's memories in a chapter that's already huge? Especially for a character that's supposedly dead. You don't dedicate that much runtime to a corpse. And that's exactly why Huggy Wuggy is coming back in Chapter 6. So is Kissy Missy. The Negation Formula and the Poppy Gel are setting up some kind of revival. Not fully healed, or at full power, because that'll completely destroy the tension against the prototype. Maybe they will come damaged, half revived, or just strong enough to help during the final confrontation. Those flashbacks were in random filler scenes, and midway through Chapter 5, there's an engineering section connected to the shipping bay, and you need a password to access a bunch of hidden documents. But once you finally get in, you discover a dark truth, because printed all over those papers, and even projected onto the walls, is something called the Negation Formula. And this thing is key, because the Poppy Gel is literally what makes the prototype immortal. Burn him, freeze him, hit him with a train, he just regenerates. Giblet straight up tells us that if you cut the prototype in half, both pieces crawl back together and fuse again. This dude literally doesn't die. And the documents explain why. The Poppy Gel regenerates organic tissue using a raw gel base, and if it keeps making contact with biological tissue, it never stops growing. It becomes a non-stop chain reaction. That's why Poppy Playtime created the Negation Formula, a counter agent specifically designed to stop the regeneration process. Not weaken the prototype, but kill him. This is the weapon, and Chapter 6 is absolutely building toward using it against the prototype, because Mob Entertainment doesn't introduce a kill switch this important unless they plan to use it later. Quick thing though, if you want the full Chapter 6 prediction series, subscribe and turn on notifications, because every time Mob drops a new teaser, I'm gonna be covering it. But now we need to talk about the character that's probably gonna hunt us through the entire next chapter, Chum Chompkins. You barely see him in Chapter 5, but one of his scenes completely changes how Chapter 6 is gonna work. Right after we hand the Negation Formula over to Giblet, Giblet asks Chum if he can take him to the Data Backup Center, but Chum refuses, and right at that moment, the prototype shows up. Chum has no choice, so he hides us inside his stomach while the prototype talks to him directly. And while we're hiding in there, we hear the entire conversation. The prototype tells Chum exactly what he wants. Find the player, find Poppy, or die. That's the deal. And after the prototype leaves, Chum spits us back out, uses sign language to tell us to stay safe, and then just walks away looking completely broken. And after that, we never see him again, which is exactly why Chum Chompkins is becoming the Chapter 6 stalker enemy. He's gonna hunt us through the factory the same way Mommy Longlegs and Catnap did. But the difference is, Chum doesn't want to do it. The prototype is forcing him to. So now Mob is creating a villain you actually feel bad for. But Chum isn't even the scariest part, because after the prototype knocks us unconscious, he takes Poppy back to a lab we've never seen before. Not kills her, takes her. And every single Chapter 5 trailer keeps showing the exact same creepy image over and over again. Poppy heads, dozens of them, lined up everywhere, which means the prototype is experimenting on her on a massive scale. And the tapes in Chapter 5 explain exactly why. The prototype keeps talking about how eternity shouldn't be lonely.
Otherwise, we'll be left with... And infinity will be lonely.
Because Poppy and the prototype clearly share something the other toys don't, some kind of immortality. And the prototype is trying to extract the ability from Poppy and give it to every other experiment inside the factory. That's why he talks about surviving until the stars stop shining. That line shows up multiple times in the tapes and notes. It's not random dialogue, it's literally his goal, which means Chapter 6 is taking us deeper into the prototype's real lab. Not the ones we already explored, the hidden one, the place where he's been running experiments this entire time. And there's one character we still haven't truly met yet, who's been hanging over this entire story from the shadows. Preston Willard. Preston was the scientist who made a deal with the prototype. He basically said, let me out and I'll give you immortality. And that was the deal. And Preston took it. He was ambitious, obsessed with survival, obsessed with escaping the factory. And the second he opened the prototype's containment chamber, the hour of joy began. Everything started there. Preston and his partner Jessica managed to survive for another 10 days after the massacre. But on the 10th day, Wuggy finally found them. The two got separated, and Chum Chompkins dragged Preston directly back to the prototype. And then Mob showed us something horrifying in the ARG trailer, because we finally see what happened to him. The prototype kept his promise, just not in the way Preston expected. He turned Preston Willard into a Catbee experiment stitched together from pieces of other toys. And while Preston is literally being transformed, the prototype tells him, because you were there for me, now I'll be there for you forever. That line is insane, because technically the prototype never lied. He did give Preston immortality, but now Preston is trapped forever inside a broken toy body. But there's one final problem Chapter 6 still has to deal with: Dr. Harley Sawyer. Because at the end of Chapter 5, Sawyer comes back, and the first reaction everybody had was, wait, didn't we already kill this guy? Not exactly. See, Sawyer was uploaded to Playtime Co systems. He's not really a person anymore. He's basically part of the factory itself. So when we defeated him in Chapter 4, we didn't actually kill him. We just shut him down. And the second the backup systems came online in Chapter 5, Sawyer came back with them. As long as Playtime Co servers are still running, Harley Sawyer is still alive. Which means Chapter 6 isn't just setting up one final villain. It's setting up two. The prototype and the system keeping Sawyer alive behind the scenes. So even if the prototype dies, Playtime Co itself might still survive. So yeah, that's where Chapter 6 is heading. The Wrongside Outimals labs, the judge reveal, Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy returning through the Poppy gel, the Negation Formula becoming the prototype skill switch, Chum Chompkins hunting us through the factory, the prototype's hidden laugh, what he's really gonna do to Poppy, Preston Willard's horrifying fate, and Harley Sawyer still living inside the system. That's Chapter 6. But there's still one thing Mob hid from us, because apparently there was actually a fourth Huggy Wuggy flashback hidden in the files before it got removed. And once you see what was inside it, it completely changes how we see Huggy Wuggy. I'm covering all of that in the next video, so subscribe if you don't want to miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.